Hi guys, welcome back for another video. We're going to be starting a new series today called Speak Like a Native. So the reason I wanted to do these videos for you guys is because I wanted you guys to know how to sound more like a native speaker. So there are some particular words that we use in English that are more commonly used by native speakers than foreign learners. So I thought this would be really useful for you guys. And just something I want to let you guys know before we start the video. So if you don't understand, remember you can use the automated subtitles. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. So yeah, they will just come up at the bottom of my video in English and it will just translate what I'm saying and you will be able to read it underneath the video. Okay, so something that I really notice with foreign students is that when they want to say that something is a lot of or very or something like that, they always use the word very in front of something. So they say something like, I'm very pretty, I'm very smart. But this is really basic English, guys. So you really want to try to use some different words that will also improve your vocabulary level. It will also make you sound more like a native speaker. So let's start with the first one. So with the first one, we have very often. Now, often, very, very commonly used. But as I said before, people like to just add very before to try to say that it's a lot of. However, most native speakers probably wouldn't use that term. They might use something else. For example, frequently. So instead of having to use two words, you just cut it down to use one word. And as I said before, this word is more advanced than adding very before another word. So an example for the first one could be, I don't use public transport very often to go to Los Angeles. So you can just change this for frequently. So I don't use public transport frequently to go to Los Angeles. On to the next word, we have old, and then you just change it to very old, which is what most people will probably use. However, as a native speaker, I would rather use ancient. Now, ancient is normally referring to things that are extremely old, for example, the Egyptian times or things like that, but it can just be used to replace very old. So for an example, you could say, this building is very old, probably from the medieval age. Now, if you don't know what the medieval age is, it's a period in time in the UK history. And just a tip for you guys, you can also use ancient as a joke. So you could say something like, my grandma is ancient, or, you know, that book is ancient, or something like that. On to the next one, we have very rich. Now again, just like the other two, rich is a more basic English word. And then if you just put very, it just means that it's a lot of. However, as a native, we would more likely say wealthy. So for an example, I could say, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, is wealthy, not very rich. On to the next one, we have very tired. Now, again, this just sounds a bit very repetitive. I use the term very again, but it sounds repetitive because you are constantly using the word very. So you could change this to exhausted. You can say something like, I'm exhausted today, so I can't attend the party tonight. Rather than, I'm very tired, I can't attend the party tonight. On to the next one, we have very careful. Now you can say, oh, you need to be very careful there, but as a native speaker, we would rather use cautious. So that's another way to say careful, and that is more of an advanced word as well. So let me give you an example for this one. You could say, you must be very careful when you talk to the head teacher, or you must be cautious when you talk to the head teacher. On to the next one, which is a really, really common used phrase in English, is very bad. Now, like I mentioned before, constantly using very before the word just makes it sound very, very basic. So instead, you could say something like awful. So, for example, instead of saying Mary is very bad at geography, you could be even ruder and say Mary is awful at geography. On to the next one. Now, I have heard my students try to say this sometimes. Sometimes they try to say it's very necessary, but actually, because necessary is such a long word, you don't really want to use very before that word. It just doesn't sound very good. So instead of using that, you could say essential. So it's essential that you do something. So an example could be, that book is very necessary for our historical project. So again, like I said, doesn't sound too good. So we can change that to, this book is essential for our historical project. On to the next one, we have very hungry. So sometimes you will hear a lot of people saying this, oh, I'm very hungry. But it would actually be better if you used a word like starving. So completely remove the very and just say, I'm starving. And then people will know that you are very, very hungry. So for example, you could say, I'm very hungry, by the way. Do you have some food for me? Or you could say, I'm starving, by the way. Do you have some food for me? On to the next one, we have very funny. So similarly to hungry, you will hear a lot of people saying, oh, that's very funny. But actually, it's not very commonly used by native speakers. We would rather say hilarious. So we would say, that's hilarious, or that film's hilarious. So an example could be, John is a very funny guy, isn't he? Or you could change this to, John's an hilarious guy, isn't he? On to the last one, and one of the most commonly used ones, we have very good. Now, this is really commonly used when people ask you, how are you? And someone could say, I'm good, or I'm very good. But you can just change this to another word and say excellent. So that's a lot more commonly used by natives. So instead of saying it's very good, you could say it's excellent. Okay guys, so that is it for part 1. If you would like to see part 2, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and I'm waiting for your comments. I'll see you in the next video guys. Bye.